highlight the growing importance of freedom of expression in college.
Francois Marie Arouet, better known by his pen name Voltaire, was a key thinker during the Enlightenment period. His works, along with many of his contemporaries, went on to shape the beliefs that held by our founding fathers, and his controversial and revolutionary ideas about the church and slavery still impact civic thought today.
Anne Hutchinson, a colonial religious figure who predates Voltaire by about a century, also significantly influenced the ways in which the founding fathers viewed personal freedom and free speech with their public demonstrations of free speech.
The importance of these ideals to American society was further demonstrated through the Stamp Act protests of 1765. Each of these three topics uniquely demonstrates how the ideas of dissent and anti-institutionalism have previously affected and continue to affect the American government today.
Voltaire's influence on the founders was crucial in shaping their beliefs in freedom of expression. Through his criticism of the French political and religious systems, Voltaire argued for the right to challenge authority and speak freely, which was not common in that era. A quote commonly attributed to Voltaire is, "I do not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to do so."
This quote resonated with founders such as Jefferson and Madison, who saw the importance of protecting free speech against suppression. Voltaire's ideas about dissent and the need to question authority inspired constitutional framers, especially anti-federalists, to emphasize the right of freedom of speech and the separation of church and state.
While Voltaire's anti-establishment ideas were present in the Constitution and especially in the Bill of Rights, the colonial reaction to the Stamp Act of 1765 is what truly led the way for change to occur. Its high taxes motivated the colonists to start their first large-scale protests against the British. The American people were not willing to silently accept England's control any longer.
The wide-scale backlash to the act spawned the infamous phrase, "no taxation without representation." For many colonists, it was no longer about the financial strain caused by the acts. Instead, they saw it as a violation of their very rights.
Anne Hutchinson, a mother of 13 and a citizen of Massachusetts colony during the early 1630s, would publicly insist that women could interpret the Bible for themselves. She was a good speaker, and over time, groups as much as 60 women and a few men would gather at her home in Boston to listen to her criticize local ministers.
For these actions, she was put on trial twice by both the government and the church. She ended up being legally banished from the colony, although both trials were extremely corrupt in their proceedings. Her choice to stand up for her beliefs resulted in public shaming and disgrace. The need for the protection of religious rights, freedom of speech, and fair trials was imperative for those like Hutchinson who chose to speak out.
The need for religious freedom especially is why the colony of Rhode Island was founded. It was created as a safe haven by Roger Williams for those seeking religious freedom. Their strong belief in personal freedoms and religious dissent eventually disseminated throughout the colonies, leading to a strong spirit of freedom that our country still prides itself on. Ideas such as those presented in Oklahoma House Bill 1006 potentially threaten this crucial balance.
When drafting the Constitution and Bill of Rights, the founders made several intentional choices to include certain rights that the American public had clearly desired: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to protest.
These rights of free expression have been effectively utilized throughout the history of the United States, whether it be through the Civil Rights era, women's suffrage, or more recently, the Gaza campus protests. Together, the people with these freedoms serve as a fourth branch of government, whose responsibility and right is to check the other three. This concludes our statement, and we look forward to the discussion that follows.
Thank you. All right, let's have this discussion. You said a quote, so I'm just gonna have to mention it. I do not agree with what you said, but will defend your right to say it. Do you think that as a country, we are still in that space?
I don't believe so. I think there have been lots of suppression of freedom of speech, especially on college campuses with these recent Gaza encampments. These people have been protesting for they've been pro-Palestinian activists protesting for the rights of the Palestinian people, but the current administration is viewing that as anti-Semitism or somehow hatred against Jews, and I definitely feel like people aren't respecting their right to say what they believe about the war in the world.
What about when there is anti-Semitism and when there are violent attacks on Jews on campus?
That is a very major problem, and I don't mean to discredit that, but I do think anti-Semitism is being used to curb people's political speech. If there is a trial and there's clear anti-Semitism on campus, then I 100% believe that those horrific acts need to be shut down, but I don't think that's an excuse to shut down the free speech of pro-Palestinian activists.
Right,
Well,
such as-
isn't anti-Semitism free speech?
Well, it would be classified as hate speech, which is
Yeah.
legally protected. However, and it's on campus, and like in the example you were describing, you were describing students potentially being attacked, which would then go far beyond the point of free speech.
Right, such as
Right.
an event that happened at UCLA where there were 3 Jewish students who were blocked or barred from entering a building, and those students that barred them were given criminal charges.
How about heckling or, how do you see that?
I mean, as established when it comes to the imminent threat principle with freedom of speech, established in Brandenburg, Ohio, as long as you're not posing an imminent threat to another group of people that is posing hatred, then you are in the clear, and that is your freedom of speech.
Thank you. Do you think the federal government is using these arguments when they are pursuing those students?
I do not personally believe that, at least from a legal standpoint, they are, especially in the case of immigrant students, they are essentially not even being given their right to due process. You know, they are being denied their Fifth Amendment right, and they are essentially being shipped off without trial, without any sort of real legal reasoning. But while the public reasoning may be kind of this idea of anti-Semitism, I'm not sure how much that actually applies.
What's the charge, though? What's the charge the federal government's making?
With the anti-Semitism, I guess.
No, with the people that they are seeking to deport, who are students on college campuses. What's the federal government's argument?
I believe they're speaking out in favor of like terrorism.
Right, there.
Or ideas like that. But I personally do not think that being pro-Palestine and being pro-Hamas is related at all.
And simply what this is creating is a killing effect for college students who are trying to protest or using their right to protest. And even so, President Trump was planning on cutting funding for Cornell University and Northwestern University, $1 billion for Cornell and $790 million for Northwestern, and taking these funding away unless they stop these protests. And so what President Trump is currently doing is really creating a chilling effect on these students and on these speeches. And I can just hear the echoes of the employees at these universities saying, hey, don't do this because we don't want to lose our funding for research and things that are going to help the business society.
Did you say, Luke, that you don't think that supporting Hamas is supporting terrorism?
No, I said that supporting Palestinian citizens and trying to speaking out against the genocide of innocent Palestinians is related to supporting the terrorist organization Hamas.
Certainly Hamas is defined as a terrorist organization by the United States, and defending them should result in criminalization.
Should, what? I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
It should result in criminalization.
Should,
Defending a terrorist organization.
okay. But you're just saying that some of those students haven't been doing that. You're saying the students haven't been doing that.
Not from what we have read.
So I want to kind of continue this kind of discussion, but I want us to kind of reflect, is our government, I know that you mentioned an Oklahoma law, and so feel free to either go on the state or the federal level. This is a hard one because the words are close. Are our governmental systems supporting the freedom of expression that Hutchison and Voltaire promoted, or are we deviating from that?
I believe we're especially deviating from it, using the Alien Enemies Act and deporting these students. I think we're supporting institutions, contrary to being anti-institutionalist like these 3 events want us to do, influence the founders to be.
Especially in regards to religious freedom. I mean, if we look at recent laws in France, ban use of the hijab as in schools, which I think is personally horrifying. But in the Oklahoma hospital that we were referencing, it's about the requiring schools to have the Ten Commandments posted on school property, which to me seems like a violation of the Establishment Clause. But of course, there's some who debate it.
Okay. So let's talk about the First Amendment, and do we feel like we are crossing the line in chilling freedom of expression outside of the education setting? So in general, as a whole in society, or is it focused on just the education setting?
Certainly, I believe that there is definitely chilling going on inside the education setting, but when you look at outside of it, you look at Hill v. Colorado, you look at Ward v. Rocks Against Racism, I believe is the case, where these organizations, such as the abortion clinic in Colorado, is setting buffer zones, and the city of New York in Ward v. Rocks Against Racism is saying that if you are a street performer, you have to use their certain equipment for your expression to kind of, so they're able to control the volume and stuff. So being allowed to have that freedom of expression, that freedom of speech, but then also not hindering the safety and also the convenience of individuals.
Right, and looking even as recent as today, the Supreme Court ruled that the government is allowed to block whatever they label to be misinformation on social media, to try and regulate social media companies somewhat arbitrarily, because from what I understand, there's not a super clear definition of what is misinformation. And it opens the door to a potential of worry possibilities.
I want to echo both of those statements. I don't think it has much of a chilling effect outside of college campuses, because if you look at Sackett Harbor in upstate New York, just recently, a town of about, I think, 1,200, about 1,000 people came out to protest members of their community being detained by ICE, and they eventually got those people released.
What do you got?
No time.
I'm sorry.